I know my God is real. You may doubt the things I say and doubt the way I feel, but I know He's real today. He'll always be. I can feel His hand in mine, and that's enough for me. I will never walk alone. He holds my hand. He will guide each step I take, and if I fall, I know He'll understand. Till the day He tells me why He loves me so. He loves me so. I can feel His hand in mine. That's all I need to
Written by Mosi Lister. He also wrote 2 other songs for Elvis, He Knows Just What I Need and Where No One Stands Alone. Now, he was invited by Hovey Lister, they're not related, to be the original lead singer of the Statesman Quartet. Now, that was the Statesman Quartet from 1953. What a rousing version that was. And I decided whether or not we're going to play it all the way through. But when you listen to that last bit of the song, I had to. The gospel group was founded in 1948 by Hovey, and Mosi and Jake were kind of sharing the role as lead singer. But not long after joining, Mosi retired, and he then went on to write some of the most famous gospel songs throughout the whole world. And then Jake Hess took over as lead singer. And as you all know from our How Great Thou Art sessions, Jake was Elvis's favourite gospel singer. Incidentally, at Elvis's funeral in 1977, the Statesman would sing Sweet, Sweet Spirit, and known only to him. And of course, they were on the same recording label as Elvis, RCA Victor. Hang on, I think there's something I forgot. Come in, young man. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Craig's back. I haven't seen him for a little while because he started out on his own exciting journey in his working life. As I say, and this is the first time we've caught up for some time. Yes, we stay in contact on the phone, and we're constantly messaging each other because, as you know, Elvis Through His Eyes takes a lot of collaboration from the pair of us. I want to make that clear now. That is a collaborative bit of work. Craig does all the writing and I put it all together. But apart from that, it's the first time I've seen him in a couple of weeks. Now today we are here to review his Hand in Mine, the latest FTD release. And this has winged its way to us. I've had it about a week now. And as you know, last week I did promise you we would have the full review for you. But as you know, on this channel, we don't want to just talk about the current release. We want to talk about the history behind this album and why Elvis chose which songs he chose, and of course what greatly influenced him. And incidentally, if you think that's from 1953, Elvis is 18, and as we know, he's starting out on his fledgling career, and he's already going into Sun. But these songs obviously have been influencing him for a long time. And a lot of these groups, which Craig and I will talk about a little bit later in the video, they were either his mother's favourite gospel group or they were his father's favourite gospel group. Now, His Hand in Mine released in December 1960 in the USA, and it got a release in the UK of May 1961, some kind of 5 or 6 months later, but that's what happened. It was Elvis's first gospel album. Now, it got certified gold on April the 9th, 1969. Now, on May the 9th, 1965, there was a special Mother's Day airplay on radio, which this album would receive lots of attention. Obviously, the Colonel, in his infinite wisdom, would think it would appeal to mothers across the United States, and the hard sell was on. It may have helped pushed it to the million sell those 4 years later. Craig, hello.
Yeah, it's good to feel his hand in mine. Let's do that once more.
Yeah.
Appropriate. Yeah, so basically what we want to do is, obviously we're going to review the box set, review where, to my mind, there's 3 songs on here that didn't appear on the original 2006 release, and where they've appeared before. So there is nothing actually on this set with regards to Surrender Take 4 that we've not had before. And obviously, as we know, Surrender Take 4 is the original, with Work Part Take 8. So that's interesting. We do want to dig quite deep into it, so you know you're getting your money's worth. To me, you're getting your money's worth purely because it's all in one place. It's a fantastic booklet with it. It goes into excellent detail.
And let's not forget, up till 2006, there have been various recording issues with this particular album. Those were rectified in 2006, but I think in 2021, it's come on leaps and bounds even more. And the audio quality on this is literally quite stunning. It is almost like being in the studio with Elvis. And obviously we're going to play some bits for you in a little while, but we wanted to start with that Statesman version because that was what directly influenced Elvis. Now, a little bit about the sessions. They were recorded on a 14-hour session on October the 30th and the 31st. I believe they started at 6:30 in the evening on the 30th, and they were going as long as 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. the following morning.
Now we've got the A team in there, so literally everyone that's been on the Elvis back session is on this one. So we got Scotty Moore and Hank Garland on guitar. We've got Bob Moore on bass. Again, we've got the double drummers of DJ Fontana and Buddy Harmon. Floyd Kramer on piano.
Yep.
And then obviously we've got Boots Randolph on sax. And then how this differs from How Great Thou Art is that we've literally just got the Jordanaires and Millie Kirkham backing him. And obviously, as we know, on How Great Thou Art, there was that big symphony choir backing him up. So it's a very different sound.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that. And I think that, as we know, in 66, when they got him back into the studio, they wanted to get him back in. So by appeasing him, they're going to give him what he wants. And that's why he's got all this cacophony of sound. Yeah, exactly. Now, this was, as you know, over the last few weeks, we've been building up to this. We've done the Flaming Star film review. We did Wild in the Country. And this is sandwiched a week before he records the Wild in the Country sessions. And as you know, at this particular time, his voice is as sweet as an angel. And I beg to differ. Did he sound any better on vinyl, on CD, on cassette, whichever way you want to look at it, at this moment in time? His voice was absolutely unbelievable.
So we just look at that, the time that he's come back from the army to up to this point of How Great Thou Art. Within 7 months, he's done Elvis is Back.
Yep.
He's done GI Blues.
Yep.
He's done Flaming Star.
Yep.
He's just about to start Wild in the Country. And then he's got another album that he's cutting, obviously, His Hand in Mine. But in 7 months, he's made 2 films, 1 major album release.
Hang on a minute. We've got to play some music behind us, Craig. You know I like a bit of music.
Yep, sorry.
And we're getting ahead of ourselves. You guys want to hear that as well. And as you know, today we are back with playing the music. I said a couple of weeks ago we weren't going to play it. And I had some serious misgivings about that. I cannot make this channel how I want it without playing the music, because that is fundamentally what it's about. Yes, we've got Elvis Through His Eyes. That is a separate part of the channel. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But today, let's celebrate the music of Elvis Aaron Presley.
Should we start with the 1947 Milky White Way by the Trumpeters? Because obviously that was a huge influence on his version. So we'll cut to that.
Yeah, we've obviously over the last few days we've been digging out various releases and recordings, and this version by the Trumpeters, we'll put it up now for you.
Yes, I'm going to walk all that milky white way. Oh, child, some of these days. Well, I'm going to walk that milky white way. Oh, some of these days. Well, well, well. I'm going to walk hard and take a Mustang. Gonna join all the Christian band. I'm going to walk all that milky white way. Oh Lord, some of these days. I'm gonna tell my mother howdy when I get home. Yes, I'm going to tell my mother howdy I get home.
More tempo.
Yes, I'm gonna walk all that milky white way. Oh Lord, some of these days. Well, I'm gonna walk that milky white way. Some of these days. Well, 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 well. I'm gonna walk up and take my stand. Gonna join that Christian band. I'm gonna walk all that milky white way.
And that will be the flavour of today's video. When we play a version that inspired him, we will play his version, and then you can see how it differs. But with a lot of these, he sticks true to the original recording. Obviously, he may add some more tempo to it, but obviously Elvis does it in his own imitable way. And even just listening to those two recordings, the feeling that Elvis gives it is just different from any other singer.
Well, you've got to consider that you've got, when you consider his gospel influences, so you've got white gospel, which predominantly would be the Statesmen and the Blackwood Brothers. And then you've got people like the Trumpeters, the Golden Gate Quartet, which is that black influence. And that, to be honest, I think the white influence and the black influence is 50-50 to me. We know he loved those white gospel
It's just
groups,
a perfect blend, isn't it?
It is a perfect blend, and he's not ashamed to use both those influences, and you feel it. So, where as we were discussing earlier with the white gospel quartet, like the Statesmen, there's a rigidity to it, but where he brings his flavour and his rhythmic grace to it.
Exactly.
It's like,
even I think someone likened this album as like jumping into a warm bath of milk.
Yeah.
It's really smooth. But that's an interesting point about Jake Hess. Even though Jake Hess was, we know, Elvis's favourite gospel singer, as Craig rightly pointed out, when he's singing it, there isn't that fluidity, there isn't that feeling. And it's almost like Hess is classically trained. Now, I don't think for one moment he was, but it may have been the era that, this stuff came out, which was the early 50s. But you got to bear in mind, 1956, 3 years later, Elvis is doing it his way. And he would do his first gospel recording of Peace in the Valley. And it was totally different to anything else that anyone had ever seen.
yeah, I think also that Jubilee influence, where you got that high energy, the freedom, the rhythmic qualities within that black music, you can see how it's infused into his white gospel. So I think it's a mixture of both. And even when he's very faithful to those Statesmen, the Blackwood Brothers versions on this album, you've still got it infused with that feeling that, to me, no other gospel singer sang with. And that's key to us when we listen to this, as opposed to the originals. Yeah, they're a massive influence on him, but he ain't copying them, really. He's putting his own flavour on it. Yeah, and it's massive.
Now, as we know, these sessions would have to deliver 2 singles. They needed 2 singles, RCA, at this point. And the singles they would release, bang in the middle of recording this, Elvis would record Surrender. And he would also record Crying in the Chapel. Now, as we know, Surrender and Crying in the Chapel were withheld from release for a little while. Now, Surrender was 4 months. It got released in February of 1961. It was his first single of 61, and it was backed with one of my favourite tracks of all time, Lonely Man. And then, of course, Crying in the Chapel would get released in 1965.
Easter.
Yeah, Easter 65. Now, Surrender would get to number 1 on both sides of the pond. Certainly here in the UK for 2 weeks. No, it wasn't 2 weeks. That would be Crying in the Chapel. I made a mistake on that. But it would get number 1 here in the UK, and then of course it was number 1 in America, and went on to become one of his biggest selling singles of all time.
Okay. Remind me, in 1965, Carol Fran had a release of Crying in the Chapel. So I want to share that story because I don't think it's known to many people. But obviously, as we know, RCA had a habit of combing the vaults to see if there was any Elvis material that they could release. Obviously, Elvis is in the midst of his movie soundtracks. It's Easter, so what do RCA do? They release Crying in the Chapel, unbeknown to Elvis. He wasn't aware of it. Obviously, Elvis was never satisfied with his recording, which is incredible to us because it's phenomenal. But basically, Carol Fran was charting at the time with Crying in the Chapel. As soon as Elvis's version comes out, cuts her's dead. And funny enough, she bumped into Elvis sometime later, and she basically said to him, you could have waited to release yours. Yours came out and knocked mine dead. And he said, what are you talking about? She said, Crying in the Chapel. And basically, he had no idea. He was somewhat embarrassed. So what he does, calls one of the guys, hey, give me my checkbook. Writes her a check there and then. She quickly grabs it off him, sticks it in her purse, and that was it. They parted their ways on good terms, because obviously Elvis wasn't aware of what RCA were pulling here. And it got to about Christmas time, and Carol Fran still had that check in her purse. She hadn't even taken it out. She was on the phone to her mother, saying that times were tough, and she relayed the story about Elvis. And she goes, well, how much was that check for? She goes, well, I don't know, I haven't opened it. She goes, well, go and get it out of your purse. She then goes into her purse, pulls out the check, reveals it, and she can see 102030, and he's written a check for $10,000. Now, bearing in mind, Carol Fran, with all the royalties that she made, never made $10,000 on any of her recordings that I'm aware of. That just shows the generosity of Elvis. I mean, $10,000 in those days would have been equivalent to $75,000 today. That is some gesture. For a recording that he didn't really care for, or the end result, he loved the song, but he didn't like his interpretation of it, and how he affected another artist.
And incidentally, obviously we know that story from old, but for those of you that don't, that's quite an eye-opener. But there would be another person closely connected with Elvis that would have a recording of Crying in the Chapel. Now that was Anita Wood, who Elvis dated in the 50s. She recorded that in 1957, and certainly I'm sure he would have heard her version of it. It was released on single on the Paramount label, and like I say, that's a great story. But incidentally, just getting back to Surrender, I think I've mentioned this before, but it was one of the shortest #1 singles of all time. It ran in at 1 minute 51 seconds. However, the shortest single was Stay by Maurice Williams at 1 minute 36 seconds. Now, what knocked Surrender off the #1 spot? Blue Moon by the Marcells. That is a great song now. I always remember that to the the opening of American Werewolf in London. Do you remember that? And I first heard that, I thought, what a great song. But yeah, when Elvis recorded Surrender, it was sandwiched between He Knows Just What I Need and Mansion Over the Hilltop. So he's doing his gospel, they're then recording a contemporary pop song, if you like, and then he gets straight back into the gospel again. But we know he had difficulties with the ending on that song, don't we? And Craig and I have been talking about this. This is another Ray Walker story where Ray has got his information obviously mixed up over the years of time. You know.
Yeah, I mean, when you I know you spoke about it so in another video where we thought it was It's Now or Never, because obviously Elvis hits the big note at the end of It's Now or Never, and then a few months later we're back at Surrender, and Ray's having to go through the process of teaching him how to hit the note, which doesn't quite make sense. And what Ray means is that the singer needs to project or to be sick, so you have to force your belly against your belt, and it comes from the diaphragm, it comes from your stomach. And that's what he was teaching him. So I personally don't think he's gone through that process again with Surrender. No. I think it initially happened with It's Now or Never. Whatever it is, it's a great story. And I don't think I think Ray's being genuine, but just with time, you get things mixed up. So I generally do think it came from It's Now or Never.
Yeah.
We do know that Elvis hit that last note 8 times, or when he was doing the work part of it. So I don't think he really had a problem hitting the note, because once he learned how to do it, I think from
of course, isn't it the very first take? He doesn't hit the high note at the end, does he? It's just a normal, you know.
And then he hits it one after the other, doesn't he?
So he was clearly trained at that point to be able to do it, and probably one of the very few times that he was trained vocally in his career. Now, Crying in the Chapel, obviously it was married up with I Believe in the Man in the Sky, and it was his first #1 in the UK since the advent of the Beatles. So he broke their domination just for a short while, but it made #3 in the USA, and as Craig alluded to, even #3 in the USA in those days, that would be a huge amount of royalties.
Should we have a bit of it?
Yeah, why not?
You saw me crying in the chapel. The tears I shed were tears of joy. I know the meaning of contentment. Now I'm happy with the Lord. Just a plain and simple child, where humble people go to pray. I pray the Lord that I'll grow strong. When we kiss, my heart's on fire, burning with a strange desire. And I know it's time I kiss you, that your heart's on fire too. So, my darling, please surrender. Oh, your love so warm and tender. Let me hold you in my arms, dear, while the moon shines bright above.
tell you now, there's a real atmosphere in this room. Make my bloody eyes water.
What a track that is.
Yeah, and look, anyone with half an ounce of common sense would realise that Elvis was very proud of that track. You cannot be a singer to sing like that and not be proud of such a great vocal. And be it 1 minute 51 seconds.
Does it need any more?
I'd have loved more, but no, it didn't.
So as we know, that is take 4 with work part take 8. And funnily enough, on this release, it is the first time that we do have Surrender take 4, which obviously is the one that they used, but they did splice it with work part take 8. But we do have it in its complete take here for the first time. So to me, that makes it worth having purely because we've never heard that before. So
yeah, but look at the overall presentation of it, Craig.
So that's your
yeah.
John
I spoke
isn't
to
it?
Jimmy Carpenter about this,
Sorry,
and
Jimmy.
I said to him, I sent him a message saying, look, you know, is there anything you can tell me about this particular release? Was there any great stories? Did you have any troubles? And he said, Scott, honestly, it went as smooth as silk. He said, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It wasn't one of those where he couldn't find the right images. Because that image, if we'd seen that on the original album release, we wouldn't have been disheartened, would we? I mean, and to be fair, the original album release is probably one of my favourites pictures that was put on any album. Yeah, this is an alternate one. I'll stick a picture on screen.
Wow.
And it's literally just his face is just looking slightly different. But you'll notice on the original album, and incidentally what we've got behind me here, I've got the original